Okay, so this happened a few weeks ago, and I still get freaked out thinking about it. I never told anyone except my best friend Jessica because I'm kinda embarrassed I got so scared. But it was seriously the creepiest thing ever, and I just have to get it out, so here goes. It started one weekend my parents were out of town. They left me and my older brother Luke in charge of the house. Luke was having some friends over that night and wanted me out of the way. He can be such a jerk like that. Anyway, I didn't have anything else to do, so when my friend Sam asked if I wanted to go for a drive, I said yes. Big mistake. Sam picked me up around 9 in his older brother's pickup truck. The plan was just to go cruising around town, maybe stop for food or whatever. I figured we'd stick to the main roads where there's streetlights and stuff, but Sam had other ideas. After getting fast food, he decided to go out to Miller's Pond. I thought it was a little weird since that area is just woods and farmland. But Sam insisted it would be more fun than staying in a boring old town. I started feeling uneasy as we drove down the narrow dirt road leading out to the pond. No streetlights anywhere, just pitch-black woods pressing in on both sides. Sam didn't seem nervous at all, joking around about dumb stuff, but my nerves were going haywire. When we got to the pond, it was seriously creepy. Just this big dark pit in the middle of nowhere. Didn't help that fog was drifting across the water, making it look like some horror movie. I asked Sam if we could leave, but he wanted to get out and walk around. Great idea, I thought, but just kept quiet. We got out and went down by the water. It was so quiet. Only sound was our feet on the gravelly shore. The fog swirling over the cold water was majorly freaking me out. It muffled all other noise, so it felt like we were the only people left on Earth. I kept glancing around nervously, but Sam just skipped rocks, oblivious. After a while, I convinced him to get back in the truck by saying I was cold. I hoped we would head straight back to town. But no, Sam wanted to explore more country roads. I should have put my foot down, but I was too much of a pushover. So we started driving down these pitch-dark, winding roads, with just the truck's headlights cutting through the blackness. No lights anywhere from other houses. It was the middle of nowhere. Sam chatted and joked, clearly having fun. Meanwhile, I was huddled in my seat, heart pounding. The creepiest part was the woods. The headlights would reflect off dozens of shiny eyes peering back from the forest at the edge of the road. Raccoons or deer or who knows what watching us drive by. It made my skin crawl imagining what could be lurking just out of sight in the impenetrable darkness. I lost track of how long we drove around those twisting rural roads. Felt like hours. Occasionally we'd pass an abandoned barn or old farmhouse set back from the road, looking majorly sinister. By then I was convinced a crazy axe murderer was just waiting to jump out at us. But Sam was completely oblivious to the creepy vibe. He was having fun blasting music and messing with me, pretending he saw people on the side of the road, stuff like that. Normally I would have found that funny, but tonight it just amped up my anxiety. Finally, I spotted glowing lights up ahead, signaling we were reaching town. I relaxed a little, thinking we were in the clear at last. Until Sam suddenly pulled the truck off the road into a church parking lot. I yelled at him, asking what the hell he was doing, but he just laughed, saying he had to pee. I refused to get out, even though he kept poking fun at me for being scared. I seriously regretted ever agreeing to this stupid drive. After what felt like forever, Sam came back and we got back on the main roads. The streetlights and houses were so welcoming after being plunged in darkness for so long. I made Sam take me straight home, not caring if I seemed lame. The whole drive took maybe 2 hours, but it felt endless. I couldn't stop envisioning those unseen eyes watching us from the impenetrable blackness. And I swear to this day, some of the shadows in the woods weren't caused by trees or animals. There's no way to know for sure what was lurking out there just off the road, hidden by the night. Maybe it was nothing and I was letting my mind play tricks. Sam clearly didn't get creeped out at all. But then again, he doesn't have much imagination, which is probably for the best. Because envisioning what could be lurking in total darkness is way more terrifying than anything you can actually see. Okay, so this is kind of similar to my last story. Except it happened more recently and was even creepier. A couple weekends ago, I was hanging out with my friend Will. We were bored and looking for something to do. Of course, neither of us had ideas that didn't involve a screen of some kind. Eventually, Will was like, "Hey, want to go for a drive?" At first, I was hesitant, remembering how freaked out I got last time I went driving late at night. But Will promised we'd stick to main roads in town this time. No creepy rural back roads. So I was like, fine. Guess a drive is better than sitting around being bored. We jumped in Will's older brother's car, which he borrowed for the night. It was an old beater, but got us from point A to B. At first, it was pretty chill, just cruising around listening to music. Will kept making dumb jokes, trying to scare me, even though we were still within city limits. I was like, dude, knock it off, that stuff isn't funny. But of course, he just laughed. After about an hour, though, Will got bored again. And he suddenly got the bright idea to go mess with an abandoned house outside town that's supposedly haunted. I was like, absolutely not. No way was I going near a creepy old abandoned building at night. But Will kept egging me on, calling me a wimp and chicken, and I stupidly let him persuade me just to prove I wasn't scared. I know, it was super dumb logic, but it was a guy thing, I guess. So we ended up driving out past the edge of town down these narrow rural roads, almost completely swallowed in darkness. The only light came from Will's car headlights, and the moon peeking through clouds overhead. I kept telling Will this was a bad idea, but he was determined now. We were in the middle of nowhere when we finally pulled up to the abandoned house. Even just sitting in the car looking at it gave me the creeps. It was a sagging old Victorian-style house, clearly empty for ages. Half the roof was caved in and the windows were all busted out. Even worse was the overgrown dead vegetation choking what used to be a front yard. The whole place just screamed haunted. But Will seemed psyched, totally oblivious to the creep factor. He was already grabbing his phone to take pictures. I tried one last time to convince him this was dumb, but he wasn't having it. He actually called me a wuss if I didn't come with him to explore the house. So reluctantly I went with him, mostly because I didn't want him going in that creepy ruin alone. The moon gave off just enough light for us to make our way through the weeds and up the front porch steps. The whole time I kept imagining ghosts or demons lurking inside, just waiting for dumb teenagers to wander in. We crept through a front doorway with no actual door. Inside was even eerier, all our footsteps echoing through empty rooms. Will wanted to go upstairs, but I refused. Visions of the floor collapsing underneath us flashing through my mind. The wind outside made the whole house creak and groan ominously. At one point, I swear I heard real footsteps upstairs too, like something was pacing around above us. Will tried to tell me it was just the house settling, but I could tell even he was getting unnerved. After only about 15 minutes, I convinced Will we had tempted fate long enough. I could tell he was relieved to leave, despite pretending to be brave the whole time. The house just had this undeniably creepy, sinister feeling, like we were being watched. We headed back outside towards the car. That's when we heard it, a loud crashing sound coming from the back of the house. We froze, looking at each other with wide eyes. It sounded way too loud to be the wind or creaky house noises. Before I even realized what was happening, Will took off running toward his car. I turned and ran after him, heart pounding out of my chest. We jumped into the car, fumbling to get our seatbelts on as Will frantically tried starting the engine. That's when someone, or something, came around the corner of the house. In the darkness and panic, all I could register was a hulking, misshapen shadow figure, rapidly shuffling toward us. Will finally got the car started and hit the gas just as the thing reached the front of the car. We sped off down the road, both of us breathing hard with terror. I kept yelling at Will to go, go, certain that whatever monstrosity was back there was chasing us down. But eventually, after 5 minutes of flooring it with no sign of pursuit, we realized we were in the clear. I have no clue what that thing by the house was. All I know is it still haunts my nightmares. Something that huge and menacing could not have been human. To this day, I refuse to go near that creepy old haunted house again. Will agrees he learned his lesson too. Alright, so I know I've already told not one but two super creepy stories about freaky night drives. But would you believe I somehow got roped into yet another one? Yeah, I know. You'd think I would have learned my lesson by now. But when my best friend Jessica begged me to go on a late-night ice cream run with her, I just couldn't say no. It started out innocent enough. Jessica texted me out of the blue around 10 p.m. asking if I wanted to go grab sundaes from the 24-hour ice cream place across town. I almost said no, remembering my previous night drive experiences. But Jessica pleaded with me, saying she was craving ice cream and didn't want to go alone this late. After a lot of back and forth, I reluctantly agreed to go with her. Jessica didn't have a license yet, so I had to drive us in my older sister's car. It was a short 10-minute drive to the ice cream shop, so I figured what could go wrong. Famous last words, right? The first part of the drive was totally normal. Jessica and I rocked out to music and talked, thinking about what Sunday toppings we would get. For once, I was actually starting to relax and have fun on a nighttime drive. But of course, things took a turn on the way back. After getting our massive sundaes, I started driving us home along the main road through downtown. That's when Jessica suddenly asked if we could make a quick detour. I immediately got a bad feeling, remembering what happened the last 2 times I detoured off the main roads at night. But Jessica begged me, saying she just wanted to drive past this cool, historic mansion on the edge of town to see what it looked like at night. Despite my better judgment, I agreed since the mansion was only a couple blocks off the main downtown area. So I turned down the side street, leading out to the huge old house. Driving past it, even I had to admit the mansion looked crazy spooky at night. It was this massive Victorian-style place with turrets and spindles and the whole shebang. Definitely seemed like the type of house that should be haunted. Jessica was obsessed and made me loop back around to drive past the mansion again. On the second pass, she asked if I could pull over so she could take some pictures. By then, warning bells were going off in my head big time. But I pulled my car off the road onto the mansion's long, winding driveway. Jessica jumped out excitedly to take photos while I stayed in the car eating my ice cream and watching her. The mansion loomed overhead, dark except for one lit window on the top floor. Something about that one glowing window gave me the creeps, like a single eye watching us. After a few minutes, I convinced Jessica to get back in so we could finally head home. It was almost 11 and eerily quiet outside. As I pulled back onto the road, I couldn't shake the ominous feeling that we were being watched from that lit window. But I pushed the thought from my mind, ready to be back under the streetlights downtown. I made it about 100 feet before the car suddenly sputtered and backfired loudly. Then it just shut off, coasting to a stop right there on the mansion's rural access road. I tried fruitlessly to restart it, but quickly realized we had run out of gas. Jessica and I looked at each other in dismay. This was not good. It was pitch dark with no houses or lights around besides that distant mansion window. And no cell service either, of course. At first we just sat there, eating our melting ice cream sundaes and hoping a car would come by. But the longer we waited, the clearer it became that we were alone. No other cars passed, leaving us stranded there as the night dragged on. Eventually, Jessica convinced me we had to go ask to use the phone at the creepy mansion. I refused at first, but realized we didn't have any other options. So reluctantly, we walked up the long tree-lined driveway, the lit window growing brighter. We rang the doorbell. No answer. We knocked, no answer. Jessica said to see if the door was open. I expected the huge front door to be locked, but the knob turned easily when I tried it. Jessica and I exchanged uneasy looks before slowly pushing the door open. Inside was pitch black and dead silent. Our voices echoed eerily as we whispered, shouted, "Hello?" When no one answered, we tiptoed farther inside using our phone flashlights. The place seemed deserted. All the furniture covered in white sheets like no one had lived there for decades. Things were looking majorly creepy until Jessica spotted an old-fashioned landline phone on a hallway table. We both rushed to grab it, this beacon of hope in the darkness. But the line was dead once I picked up the receiver. No dial tone, nothing. I shook it in frustration, but still, silence. At that point, we were both freaked out of our minds. As we turned to leave, a loud crash echoed from somewhere upstairs. We screamed, sprinting for the front door. That's when we heard heavy footsteps descending the mansion's grand staircase. We ran out the door, not looking back as we pounded down the driveway to my dead car. Jumping inside, I frantically tried starting it again, and by some miracle the engine turned over. I slammed my foot on the gas, speeding down the road just as an ominous figure appeared in the front doorway behind us. Jessica and I were hyperventilating the whole drive back downtown, trying to rationalize what just happened. In the light of day, I convinced myself it must have been some squatter taking advantage of the empty mansion. But Jenny swears to this day the place was haunted. Honestly, I'm not sure what to believe. All I know for sure is I am never doing another late-night driving favor for a friend again. My night ride days are officially over.